This is an example of the rusty spinner as I've always tied it. I began to rethink it on a recent trip to Montana, and maybe I began to overthink it. I don't know. This is a bit of a twist on the way I normally do a rusty spinner. The goals here are to make it a little bit darker, and also to improve the body, make it finer, even though it's still going to be a biot body. And I'm going to start leaving just a little bit, maybe a 1/16 of an inch space behind the eye, and take 6 or 7 turns back towards the middle. And I want this thread to wind up at about the 30% mark on the hook. And that looks pretty good. I've got a couple of medium CDC. Normally, I have used light CDC in the past, but these are medium CDC feathers. Holding them back to back. I'll try to get the tips evened up. And I want this to be a good, these wings to be a good shank length. And that's going to be about right. I'm going to do an elevated pinch so I can see exactly where to put this thread. And that way I get this tied in at the precise location that I want. Take 5 or 6 turns back and just cut it off at an angle like that. I'm going to use a modeled, this is Coq de Leon feather, and use some fibers from it for the tail. And I want this tail to be, again, a good hook length. Spinners have long tails. And I'll cut this right here once I've gotten it eyeballed. Now this tail is not going to be split as I do on most of my spinners. Spoke with Eric Pepper a few years back. Eric is a wonderful fly fisherman. Started in the Catskills. He's in Couchy and Nastassi's book. You can see him fishing in the Catskills in there. That's hatches or hatches too. I'm going to take 1 turn under this to spread the tails just a little bit. And Eric was telling me that he, as a concession to old age, was no longer splitting his tails. And he hadn't found much difference in the performance of his spinners. So in order to keep the body fine, I'm not going to split this one either. Taking a biot from towards the top of the feather. In other words, more in this vicinity rather than down here where I would normally take them. And that, again, it's just going to make it a little bit finer. Spin the thread clockwise to tighten it into a cord. That will make my loop fall correctly, and I can gather this more easily. So I've only got 1, 2 layers of thread. If I did a split tail, I would typically have twice that. So this will make for a little bit finer body. And I'm gonna wind this a little more edge to edge than I normally would. Not overlapping as much. I want to overlap a little. It just makes it look better. By the way, I tied this in on the far side of the hook, notched down. And that will give me a smoother body. The thread I'm using here is Lagarten 74 denier, rusty brown. I would love to use Benecki for this, but Benecki doesn't appear to make a rusty brown thread, which is a bit strange, but they don't. Not that I can find anyway. Now I'm going to post these wings up. Some turns right in front, and then go down towards the eye a bit, and then turns right in front again. And at this point, I'm going to split them, trying to get them back to their original, to the two original CDC feathers I tied in the first place. And I'm going to hold the near wing where I want it, in place, where it ultimately should be. I'm going to take 1, 2, 3, oops, overcooked that, 3, 4, 5 turns, trying not to affect the far wing as I do it. These are, I would call them medium tension turns. Don't use a lot of fourths. And then one behind the wings, like so. That kind of secures the near wing. And now I'm going to do the same thing with far wing, with diagonal wraps going back to front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back to front. And those wings are looking pretty good. Now, this one will sometimes pull forward a little bit, so just take one more turn around. And then I want to station the thread at the back of the thorax. This is just my method of dubbing. Your mileage may vary on this. I've got some, I think this is fine and dry rusty dubbing. It's a little darker, and I chose it for the color. I quite honestly don't like fine and dry dubbing, but you know, that's a personal thing. It's got a little sparkle to it, which is not a bad thing, probably. I don't know. I have my dubbings I like and my dubbings I'm not crazy about, and it's all very subjective. So I'm going to take turns forward, going to right behind the wings. And then I'm going to take this near wing and I'm going to, from the front, take 2 diagonal turns back. And one around the back of the hook. And then this wing, the far wing, I'm going to take 2 turns diagonally around the front. And at this point, I've got a little more dubbing than I really wanted. I might do one more turn here to kind of straighten this wing up a little bit. All right. And now I've still got that little 1/16 of an inch left at the very front. And I'll just do a 3 turn whip finish. That's all there is to that. I see I have a fiber right there. Get rid of that. All right, and there's a rusty spinner. Pretty fine abdomen on that. A nice bulky thorax, which I like. And that should fish. And next, I'll do one with a split tail and still trying to keep a fine body. And I'll show you how I accomplish that. The purists are going to hate me for this, but it was the only way I could figure out to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. For these tails, the split tails, I'm going to use Microfibbets. This could probably be done with hackle. I don't know. I haven't tried it yet. But I knew Microfibbets would work, and I've gone with them. I've tied in my wing the same way I did in the first fly. And again, I want a good hook length. I'm going to roll these right up on top of the hook. I'm going to go all the way to the bend. And then I'm going to spin the bobbin, thumb moving to the right when I spin it, as if I'm screwing in a light bulb. I want to tighten this thread up into a cord. And I'm going to take 2 turns forward. This is, in effect, making a small thread bump. I'm going to split these tails out into 2 and 2. I've got 4 fibers here. Okay. Then starting from the back, I'm going to take a loop around this. That's a loop around the far tails. And then again, go to the rear of the thread bump, if you will. And then go underneath, and try not to affect that one. Go underneath the near ones. And then take a turn around. Get a nice spread, but it's not secure. In order to secure it, I'm going to use the dreaded crazy glue. Anything else just adds a ton of bulk. You know, if I do another set of turns, it will tend to secure it. You got to be very careful with the crazy glue. And I'm just gonna take this back all the way to the bend to secure that. Now, I don't have a lot of bulk there. I have some, and the crazy glue will tend to secure that. By the way, I did flatten the thread slightly. Then at this point, take a biot. This is just like the rest of it on the last fly. Make sure you get it tied in all the way to the back. I've found with this method that the thread will slip off. There, that'll work. It'll slip off and pull the biot forward. Get that bound down. Those Electrical hackle pliers can work well for these biots too. Winding them, I'm just used to these. You know, those electrical probes. I'll show you one in a minute here. Here's one of those things. I finally bought some of these to replace my old one, which was pretty defunct. And like any tool, they work well for certain things and not great for others. Nothing's ever perfect. Post these up. Separate them out. Take 5 turns up, front to back up the near wing. 3, 4, oops. Try not to affect the far wing when you do that though. Let's try again. These are very diagonal. 1. Not going to cooperate, I can see. 2, 3, 4. We'll make it work. And these are medium turns, not a lot of pressure. And then 1 around the back. And now move this back to where you want it and do 5 turns up the far wing. I like to work on wings 1 at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. I usually wind up taking 1 more diagonally front to back here, and then I move to the back of the thorax where the thorax is going to be. Take some dubbing. You only need about three fine bunches of dubbing. 1, 2, 3. These aren't probably fine enough, but they'll work. Oops. Starting at the back of the thorax. Work your way forward to the back like so. And I like to take, I want these very diagonal. I don't want to affect that other wing. 2, maybe 1 more around the back, just to secure what you've done. I don't want that. I don't want it that far back. There. And then 1, 2. Do a third one there. Still got my little space. I'll do a 3-turn whip finish. And that's that one. And we have a nice, and by the way, I used, just so you know, I used dark Dun Microfibbets here at the tail because I wanted these a little darker than normal. Normally, I've always used light Dun CDC, but my friend Dean Umamoto pointed out to me on our Montana trip this year that He felt that the flies were lighter than the flies we were seeing on the water, the spinners we were seeing on the water. And I was thinking the same thing myself. So I've changed it up and made things a little darker. And that's the rusty spinner. So here's the original again. You know, I fished this for years, caught a lot of fish with it, never had a problem with it. That said, you're always trying to improve what you're doing, and this was another case of that. Here's the first version. Certain things I don't like about this right away. Especially the body is not smooth. I like a nice smooth body. The dubbing, I remember now why I hate that dubbing. It's clumpy. And then the tails on this second one are just too dark. I'm going to go with a little bit lighter. And this is the final version I came up with, and it's got a nice fine body, and it's darker, and I like it just fine. I did make some changes. I went back to Uni A-Dot thread, which was my original thread of choice. I just didn't feel there was much difference. I also did away with the crazy glue. I just did 2 sets on the tail of turns. And I went back to my original Harrop professional dubbing that I like. I know it floats the fly great. It looks fine. I don't know that I need to make the body darker. More the wings, I think, and tail that I was concerned about. When all's said and done, I don't know that I've done much to change the effectiveness of this fly. It will give me increased confidence when I fish the fly, and that is very, very important. So I think it was worth doing, and I'll tie it this way from now on.